Change lives.
Cambiar vidas.
Change lives.
Change organizations.
改变世
Change
界
organizations.
Change the world.
I'm thrilled I get everybody right after your coffee and sugar fix, so very excited about that. I'm going to ask Lisa to please come up to the stage with me. We're going to learn a lot about Lisa. You've got her bio in your things there, but we're going to be talking a lot about Lisa, so rather than list her stuff, I'm going to ask her a bunch of questions, and I would like to make this interactive as well. I'll certainly save time for questions at the end, but if you will please be seated. We get to, last time we did this, you were grilling me, so yeah. This is great.
Payback.
Get even with you. Oh my. So how many of you, by the way, have ever heard of or been on the site BlogHer? Anybody out there? Okay, good. Lots of you. And the rest of you, you're going to be in for a real treat. So Lisa, BlogHer, company you co-founded, what, 7 years ago?
Yes.
Top 100 web property, 12th largest women's community lifestyle network, 3rd largest food community in the US, bigger than Martha, bigger than Epicurious, quite remarkable. You reach 40 million women every month. Yep. And you have the #1 single highest concentration of women in the top properties on the web. So, not bad. Not bad. Pretty awesome. Thank you. I also know that it's vast what you touch people with. Parenting, politics, women writers. I've been to your conferences. They're just so compelling. What compelled you to start this company in the first place?
Well, thank you for asking. And Heidi actually plays a really big role in the BlogHer story because of how we bootstrapped for 2 years and then got funding. So I want to make sure we talk about that because that's really about the power of women helping women. My 2 co-founders and I decided to host a conference for women who blog because we were trying to answer the question in 2005, where are the women who blog? At the time, there was one woman who blogged, Wonquette, who was blogging politics. And the rest of us who were blogging professionally, I was blogging for the LA Times and doing other things, were just not getting the bandwidth from the print newsrooms and broadcast newsrooms where I used to work. So I just synergistically met these 2 other bloggers, Elisa and Jory, and we decided to invite other women to come to this conference. And accidentally made $50,000 when 305 women came from 4 continents to hold the first BlogHer 05. Now, in that room was a woman named Rashmi Sinha, who just sold SlideShare to LinkedIn. And also in that room was Elise Bauer, who still owns, operates, and leads the world's largest food blog called Simply Recipes. So it was a really interesting group of women who came together. And Elisa, Jury, and I were like, what just happened? Like, wow. So we decided to survey the women who came and do something unusual, which was to find out what they wanted and then see if we could build a company based upon what the community wanted. They wanted 3 things. They wanted a network where they could come together, get educated, grow their communities, and gain exposure for their writing. They wanted more conferences, and they also wanted a better business model than Google AdSense. They were only being paid about 25-cent CPMs. That's for every 1,000 people who viewed their blog by Google AdSense, which was still one of the best tools for advertising online. So we started 3 businesses to serve them. Our total available market was women who read English language blogs in the US. We're not going to boil the ocean. We're just going to do this. And today we reach more than 1 in 2 of them.
Wow. That's remarkable. Okay. And let's talk about women finding their voices. Yeah. Because you've really helped a lot of women find their voices, women helping women. I was blown away at the last conference by the quality of engagement and just, you just couldn't get the room to stop buzzing, right? It was really remarkable. Can you talk about some of the individual successes that you've seen? Sure. Maybe not necessarily the biggest dollar successes, although interested in biggest dollars as well, but also where you've seen someone break out and do something that has really been a finding of the voice or finding of their tribe, or women helping other women to achieve something.
Sure. So you mentioned the diversity of the community. And I want to, I was lucky because Susan Austin sent me a list of who was going to be here in advance because I asked for it. And when I look at this room and I look at your degrees and I think about the insane, looking at your demographic, time impoverishment that you experience, the diversity of your interests, the shocking amount of stuff you get done in a day, much less a week, that is the classic techno-savvy, aspirational woman that we reach, whether or not she has your educational level. So when we surveyed them and said, how many topics do you blog about on any given day on your food blog, your parenting blog, your politics blog, most of them picked 5 different topics. Women really do not want to be put in a box. We don't make our moms wear mom hats or our vegans wear vegan hats. It just doesn't work that way. And so when we started to put together opportunities for women to come together and grow this community, whether on the publishing and advertising side or on our conference side, we found that we had to keep meeting women where they wanted to go. And that's why we have had for a long time communities that people working at the national network level in media would think of as niche or micro niche. So it turns out that the most sticky, most addictive blogs in our network happen to be the infertility blogs. The average session on those blogs is like 8 to 10 times the average session length on the average page.
Wow.
Right? And you know, you just really are going to have to wait forever to get Big Pharma's attorneys to allow them to sponsor these blogs. But it does not matter, because it turns out that the companies that need to find women to grow their businesses are actually willing to advertise on communities where women are actually saving each other's lives, like communities like these. So that's an anonymous example. Let me give you another example, and I'm sorry to pull out the tearjerkers, but I come from a family of women who are going to get breast cancer. We're just going to get it. We all get it. Eventually we get it. There was one woman who broke out before she passed away last year, who wrote a blog called Team Why Mommy. Susan Nyber. She was a NASA scientist when she was diagnosed in her early 30s with metastatic breast cancer, which is one of the most painful, most rapacious, most difficult to treat kinds. And before she passed away, she changed the face of breast cancer blogging online. She was on every single network. She did so much to raise the profile of the writing and to empower women who had cancer to just come out and talk about it. She showed up at the conference with her scars and with her bandages and with and without her hair, depending on the year. And she just, I mean, I have to tell you, Elisa and Jordan look at each other and we're like, that's it. You know, we're done. We've succeeded. We just don't care, because the whole world met Susan Nyber. I will give you a financial example. Last one, then I'll shut up. There's a woman named Esther Crawford, who has been a blogger for a long time, who came to the first BlogHer Entrepreneurs Conference. We typically do one a quarter. We held our first one in 2011 to answer the question, where are the women in tech? Taking our first question and sort of evolving it to meet the trend du jour. She came and she got really excited about starting her own company. She joined a mobile blogging startup, mobile vlogging really, called Glimpse, G-L-I-M-P-S. What it does is, it's an app, free if you download it. When you take a picture with your smartphone, it records the video slightly before and after your photo. So it kind of gives you a little movie. And it's really unique and different, and particularly if you have once-in-a-lifetime, you know, situations that you really want to capture every moment of. It's a great thing. And she launched it at our next conference. So
cool.
It's been fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. Do you think that because now, I mean, when you started, we didn't have the proliferation of devices and ubiquity and real-timeness and all the things that we have now with the mobile world. Yeah. Do you think that's changed the face of both what is interesting to your audiences as well as what business opportunity there is for people out there?
Absolutely, Heidi. There's no question about it. I mean, first we had the technology. It's always, those of us who study the gendered use of media of any kind have long known, and I've been doing this since '97, that women actually tend to use more words than men do in any medium. And I'm not going to stereotype. I'm just going to say tend, okay? It's not true of every woman, right? But most of us. Mobile is interesting because not only did the internet liberate us from having to tune in to the television, the radio show, the what have you. It liberated us to follow our own schedules. We're the Lucy Ricardo of our own lives. But now mobile goes with us. And so the ability to reach the women who control 85% of household spending, wherever she is, whenever she is, with whatever she wants to do, glory, hallelujah. I mean, it's just, it's...
Are you seeing a lot of new models as well in terms of people in your world, developing specific apps and doing things like that, coming up with different ways to monetize, if you will. Not that it's all about monetization, but that there is the opportunity to do that. I would guess in your core group, they proliferate and do more things.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just talking to Fran Meyer about our friend Ellen Pack, who started a new service. She thought it was just a product, but I think it's going to be a company called App Smitten, where it's a daily newsletter that tells you the very best free and paid apps out there by topic. Soon to be an app.
An app itself. Wow.
So whether it's food or it's science or it's apps made by kids, they're on there. Mm-hmm. And that's a content-oriented thing, which is where I live. Mm-hmm. But yes, I think we're seeing an incredible number. I think that had a lot to do with Rashmi's success with SlideShare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I would also guess that the success of the iPad being a communication consumption device, right?
Absolutely.
And having a different way to consume things makes a huge difference. So let's talk about your own journey as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
You've raised a little over $15 million, I think. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What is it in your background that prepared you to do that? What's your secret sauce?
Oh, nothing. I mean, this is the funny thing. Can I tell the story of how you and I met? So I'm a trained writer, so obviously I'm prepared to go out and raise $15 million, right? So crazy thing, we bootstrapped for 2 years, 2005, 2006. We had 2 conferences and a fledgling publishing community under our belt of 186 blogs. We had Dove, GM, and AOL come to us and say, we love you. We'd like to give you, GM, ironically.
Yeah.
We'd like to give you like 100 times the ad revenue we can give you, but you got to grow. And the 3 of us were freelancing on the side to support our BlogHer habit. So because we had 6 figures trailing in revenue and stacked of demand, we thought we're going to go big or go home. So we decided to call the 2 or 3 people we knew in the industry, one of whom was Ann Winblad of Hummer Winblad. And Ann, who prefers to invest in the kinds of enterprise software companies that drive 87% profit margins, which is like not a media company, was still willing to take a meeting with us because she had invested in my co-founder Jory's, one of her companies, and she had invested in one of my brother's companies. We had 2 meetings with Ann where she said, I'm just so impressed that you did it. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't ask someone for permission. You didn't ask someone for money. You just went and built an actual business. So I'm going to see if I can, I'll see if I know anybody. Lo and behold, she shows up at Heidi's house for an event, meets a guy named David Siminoff, who was a partner at Venrock, and David led our A round. And he liked the company so much, he refused to syndicate it. So I read a bunch of books to find out what that meant. And he led the A round and proceeded to be willing to mentor me. And Heidi took probably like 30 miles of walks with me around Woodside and has been a mentor of mine ever since. And I can't tell you how the enthusiasm for actually building a business came through from all 3 of those individuals. Really interesting.
I actually want to throw something in, and it really relates to the last session and what we were doing there. I think when you think about mentors, there is another class. I think people, when they think of mentoring, that it has to go up or it has to go down, right? That you are the superior or the inferior. And what I would argue is there are so many cases in my life where my best mentors are my equals, my fellow travelers along the road. Mm. And I mean, you have done just as much for me as I've done for you. And you've hooked me up with some tremendous opportunities of my own, and you've been a great sounding board for me as well. And I know we have other friends, when we were doing the exercise before, and I was looking at my own map and realizing how many of the people that are closest to me are other professional women. Yeah. Either we're about the same age, or we have children the same age, or we're at about the same place in our career, and we push each other and we hold each other up when we fall, and we do all those things for each other. And so I would just encourage, I think particularly in a room full of women who could do that for each other, that you think about mentoring in that way. And I know that's been such a wonderful, wonderful thing about our relationship. But so another point that you made that I'll just underscore, there's nothing more attractive to a venture capitalist than someone who actually makes money and doesn't wait to raise money to go out there and start a business. And I know I'm personally excited about what I see out there in the market today, because with all the tools and technologies that are available, you can really get meaningful things off the ground without a lot of capital. But
you're right. You are so right. And I mean, open source, the things you can do as someone who knows simple HTML for yourself is so exciting. I mean, on LinkedIn, now that SlideShare is plugged in, I'm sorry, I love Rashmi so much. I'm just going to keep mentioning her company and that deal. But I want to echo what you just said, and thank you, because we have had a fantastic friendship. But here's the interesting thing. I feel, and I still feel like Anne and David and Heidi all really were excited about product. They were excited about products. They weren't more interested in the money or in the power plays that you hear about. I've read about the kinds of dynamics that come into a situation where there isn't enough of a product discussion, it seems to me. And I obviously, I mean, I don't know anything about the money markets. I couldn't even hold an articulate conversation about anything that had to do with the point spread and growth differential between Q1 in 2006 and Q1 in 2007. I've had to learn it all. But I really can talk a lot about why women do certain things online that they won't do in any other medium. And these guys are really listening to me. So finding people who can hear you is so important. It was incredibly valuable. And to this day, the people on our board care enormously about product. It's fascinating.
yeah. They also, I mean, they are investors, right? And you have raised $15 million, so you had to learn to at least like keep track of that money somewhere.
Yes, I've been studying hard.
Yeah. What have you done to get to the point where, because that's a lot of money. You got to, and they expect to actually have you return a lot more than that. That's kind of how it works.
Right. Right. So, you know, one of the key things that comes out of, I'm sorry to be
how do you think about that? And how do you do it?
So here's how you think about that. We decided that we were going to go big or go home. And I sat down with my two co-founders who had different experiences from my own. And this was my fourth startup, and said, you know, this is no longer a lifestyle business. If we do this, we have to aim for a 10x exit. Whatever comes in, it's got to be 10x out, or that should be our goal, right? That's utopian in some ways, because not everybody puts lightning in a bottle like Facebook is going to do, but that should be our goal. We need to realize we're in it to win it. We don't get to leave. It's not how it works. And they were willing to go there, because you can't control the future, but you do have to be willing to commit. And they were both willing to commit. So there is a new book out by our mutual friend Brad Feld and Jason Mendelson called Venture Deals: How to Be Smarter Than Your Venture Capitalist and Your Attorney. If you are interested in venture capital, rather than read all the things that I've read over the past 7 years to try to get up to speed, start with that book, and it will really help you make a fantastic negotiator. And then I have a bunch of opinions about how to put yourself in a board member's shoes. It helps. I was a business reporter and a political reporter, and I can try to think about someone else's incentives, and I've become an even better listener, I think. So there's a lot there.
There is. It's a fantastic book, and it's required reading at my
my
class.
Well, take Heidi's class.
No, you've all graduated already. You can't take my class. But you know, you just brought up an interesting word. I'm going to digress for a second on something, which is the lifestyle business. And you know, I meet with a lot of Stanford entrepreneurs. Well, I teach a class to Stanford entrepreneurs, and I meet a lot of GSBers and women GSBers who are starting businesses. And if I ever say the word lifestyle business, they want to just puke all over me. And I think it's just really interesting, because I personally think, maybe this is just the older I get, that what could be better for a lot of people than a lifestyle business, than being a small enterprise, never taking capital, and making money. And there's this, I don't know if you follow the writings of, there's a woman named Swarmana Mitra. I don't know if you follow her stuff. She's doing this cool thing about a million times a million, which is let's find and enable 1 million people who can each make $1 million a year in revenue, or small groups of people. and trying to really empower that. I'm sure if you search for it, you'll find it. And I find what's fascinating about that is the biggest challenge that I find coaching entrepreneurs here in the Valley is everybody thinks you go to Sand Hill, you raise $5 million, and then you sell to Google for $100 million, or you become Mark Zuckerberg, and that's how life works. And what people don't think through is the idea that as soon as you put someone else's capital in, you've created the expectation that you must return that capital, and oh, by the way, a multiple of that capital, and you bring other people in. So I think the fact that you guys sat there and said, it is time to go big or go home. There is an opportunity here that's bigger than the lifestyle that you perhaps started out to do, right? You didn't wake up one day and say, we think this is a huge opportunity, so to be the #1 site about women, so let's go raise a ton of money. You started very practically doing it in your spare time, and then it grew into something. But you really had a decision point, right?
Yes, we did.
And you were all thoughtful about that. Were there any sense, was that a difficult decision, and do you ever look back and wish you'd made a different decision?
I have never looked back and wished we made a different decision. I look back at we still run this company like it's our checkbook, right? So we've raised 1/10 of what Glam Media's raised. We've raised less than 1/3 of what Pop Sugar's raised, 1/7 of what Cafe Mama's raised. I think each one of those companies is brilliant. And so I'm really proud of that, because I think we hold our own in different ways against them. I look back every single quarter and every single year, and I see the missed opportunities. I'm Monday morning quarterback. So Jim Collins has a new book where he basically says that some of the best CEOs are the most paranoid. And I'm telling you, there's something in that. So I really think that sitting around and having a team of people where you can sit around and kick the tires and say, okay, that was great, that was team building, that was cup half full. Now we need to look at the cup half empty. We need to look at our warts. And we need to be able to talk about them. And one of the things is, Lisa, Joria, and I, we really disagree very well together. We all fight fair, but we definitely fight. And being a woman who knows how to talk about money with other women is a massive gift. We surveyed our community about 4 years ago, and we found that women would rather talk about the act of live sex in public than money. Okay? I'm sure that seems foreign to you, given that you're graduates of this institution, but let me tell you, holy cow, right? That's an opportunity for many of your businesses. But one of the things we do, since the reason we reach 40 million women every month is that we have a hub and spoke network. BlogHer.com is a portal to 3,000 different communities that are publishing at the magazine standard that we created when we put the Hearst magazines online at women.com and the Rodale magazines. That we are training these women to think about themselves as professional publishers and to discuss money with us every day. We've got to get this conversation going. That's as a woman in business. If you hire a woman who's having trouble talking to you about her salary, she's having a tough time advocating for herself what she wants, what her benefits are. If you're having trouble advocating for yourself what you want, what your benefits are, in a clean, well-lighted, upfront way, that's a red light.
Yeah. And along the lines of the topic of women and some of the things, I know talking about money, asking for money, uncomfortable. Putting oneself at risk, also uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You've put yourself at risk a lot, and you've probably had some failure as a result of it. Any lessons learned talking about failures and how those failures have shaped you and what you're doing?
If this weren't Heidi, I would say, well, how much time do you have? But, it's funny. I was married in my 20s. And I was divorced and a single mom when I was 30. I left the traditional newsroom in my marriage in the same fall in 1997. And I think that when you've had a personal failure, like a cataclysmic, painful failure, like my divorce was for me, it totally reshaped me because it really helped me focus. I'll never have another failure like that. There have been other things that have come along that are painful, like personally painful. But it really, it's not hard to go in and advocate for a business that I think is so obvious, like we should pay women to write because it's better than what we're getting out of what's left of the newspapers. Hello? Like that's a very easy argument for me to make, having gone to family court, or having had some of the most difficult conversations in my life. And I really have, it took me a long time, as you know, but I have really worked to pull strength from that defeat and focus from that defeat. And the women I know who are best at pursuing their business goals have figured out a way to draw inspiration from their personal failures. Of course, they're daily business failures. I mean, hello, it's not just personal Armageddon. I mean, that's where the metrics of the internet save me. If you try something and it fails and you've measured it, okay, that's today's failure. If you try something slightly like it the next day and it fails, well, now you're building a business model. Now you're actually building a record of failure. And you can go, you're just building a trend. It's all in the metrics. So we think a lot about that.
Well, I think it's interesting also how you brought up, you know, when you have failure, a cataclysmic failure in your personal life, as I too, as a recently divorced, and it was interesting, again, mapping out my social circle and who I rely on. It's interesting that some of the people I rely on most are other professional women who've also been divorced.
Yeah.
And isn't that interesting? You know, why would that be? Well, in part because when you go through something like that, you realize that your life has multiple legs to the stool. And if you don't have those multiple legs, if you only have one leg to your stool and it gets kicked out, you know, you're screwed.
Yeah.
But if you have those multiple legs, they're really great. And when you go through something as personally difficult as that and you come through the other side, you say, well, negotiating for this other stuff, it can't possibly be as hard as some of the things I've already been through, right? So, you know, but calling on that strength, and I think calling on kindred spirits is another thing that's been really, really important. You did bring up you were a single mom, so I know we're both moms. We have kids the same age.
We do. They were in the same class together for a couple years.
Yeah, which we did, I think, kind of before we knew each other, which was kind of funny. How has being a mom shaped your life as an entrepreneur?
You know, I'm just going to be like corny cornpone up here because I got to tell you, every good idea I've ever had comes from my kids. Every single one. It's like I was born, you know, when my son, who's now 16, you know, who was born. And then when he was 6, I met my new better half, Chris Carfey. And I have 2 stepchildren who I've known since they were 2 and 14, and now they're 12 and 24, and I'm the only mom in the picture. So it's been just a crazy good time. But I'll give you an example. So at women.com, we had just a brilliant team. We had a great opportunity. It was the largest website in the Web 1.0 bubble for women, and I had a brilliant editorial team, and a crazy news peg fell into our laps. There were more single men in Santa Clara County than anywhere else in the U.S. It was raining men here. And the team came to me and said, Lisa, we've got to cover this. And I was like, I'll be goddamned if I left CNN to turn us into a women's magazine. We're putting the Hearst women's magazines up. They're the best women's magazines out there. We're not going to do it. They pouted. They worked at me. And I went back to my desk after one particularly bruising session with a brilliant writer named Audrey Wong, and I was like, you know, she's right. It's a great news peg. So I looked at this picture of my little 2-year-old on my desk, and I was like, what would I do if someone invited my son to be on this list, like of the men of Silicon Valley? What would I do? I was like, well, they'd have to call me. I'm the expert. They should call me. So I went into Audrey, and I was like, we can do it if we call their mothers. we can do the men of Silicon Valley if we call their mothers. And so we called Mrs. Brin, and we called Mrs. Page, and we called Mrs. Newmark.
Oh my God.
And we had the men of Silicon Valley, and it got onto Oprah, and we called moms, all of these famous, you know, Sarah J. and Larry's and Craig's and everybody's moms. And it was a great piece because it really was a new take on these guys.
I love that.
And I would have never thought of that if I hadn't had a son.
Think like a mom.
Yeah. But, and you know, I really don't like wearing the mom hat, but it totally worked.
Yeah.
It's just been my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, a lot of us are mothers.
Right?
A lot of people with a lot of buying power are mothers, and a lot of people buy things for their children and think about things for what's more important, right? So it's a big part of who we all are as women, I think, as well, right?
And you know what's so interesting is the emerging, when we suddenly aren't moms anymore, like
Yeah.
we don't have moms at home, and we act like our wonderful single friends who had all that fabulous buying potential and none of the restrictions all those years, and suddenly we're like, I'm gonna give me some of that. And it changes everything. So really, women building businesses aimed at women who are in the post-child, gloriously empty nest phase, that's big.
I'm just laughing because you have a son and I have a daughter, and I was just thinking about, my last one is, she's 16 now too, and so I'm starting to glimpse that freedom of, and that opportunity to spend on yourself and not feel that guilty about it. So yesterday I came home with, unfortunately she's the same dress size and shoe size as I am.
That's too bad.
Yesterday I came home with and I said, do you see these? They're Manolos. Do not touch these, right? I'm experimenting, buying for myself, and these are not for you ever. So you probably don't have that particular issue with your son.
Thank God, size 14,
he doesn't
I
like
would die.
Manolos. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, you must have incredible insight to the female consumer today, and what's trending, what's going on, where are they spending their time, where are they spending their money. We have a lot of people out here who are a lot of people in marketing and packaged goods and people who are doing all sorts of interesting things in business development. Can you give us some insights from the front lines as to what's going on in the mind of the female consumer today and where are they putting their energies?
I'd love to. I think that there are 5 basic points that I would make. About 5 years ago, we decided to start doing an annual survey of women in social media because Pew and Forrester stopped doing that survey. In that time, we have found the following things. Number 1, the most convincing people to women online are other women online. Period. Women no longer trust their banks, their politicians, their institutions, their teachers, their doctors, their retailers, or their dentists. They trust each other. And so if you're trying to get a product advocated for effectively, go find the women, point number 2, for whom your product is signal and not noise. It may not be the largest single organization, but it needs to be someone who truly understands the value of your product and can evangelize it. Because number 3, we find that 87% of women who read the blogs in our network have bought a product based upon the advice of a blogger. In fact, we dug into the beauty category and we found that women who blog about beauty products, whether they're food bloggers or health bloggers, are 2 to 3 times more convincing than beauty magazine editors or celebrities, unless the reader is a Latina, at which point the celebrity is like 10 times more convincing than anyone, which is fabulous. Fiat made a very good investment in Jennifer Lopez. It's a very smart investment.
Wow.
So that's point number 3. Point number 4 that we have found is that it's interesting. Facebook is for image. Longer form content is for introspection. So as marketers, you need both. But depending upon your product, you may not want to spend a ton of time having people be either introspective or image conscious. If you're selling something that has to do with personal care, women are not going to discuss it on Facebook. They're busy keeping up with the Joneses and their frenemies, right?
Or spying on their children.
Right, or spying on our children. And then the last thing I would mention is that mobile is going to be everything except when it's not. And the not is when it's video. So the 2 biggest growth areas that I see for women online are in mobile and in video. I think that video is a fantastic way to monetize mobile. Those 10 by 50 pixel ads are going to be there for 5 seconds and then they're going to be gone. And don't forget, the number of illiterate people in this country is absolutely appalling, shocking, and makes the web currently inaccessible to so many people. Video is going to change that. Video and smartphones are going to change that.
Wow. Do you see any difference generationally?
Yes, massive.
And what can you tell us about the youngest in our demographic, among women? Any differences in what they think about?
I am surprised by the degree of unlove that I hear for some of the most popular social media tools.
Interesting.
I am surprised by the degree of dismissiveness from the boys with certain social networks and the irritation of the girls. This rodeo is not over by a long shot. There's great opportunity out there. Find yourself some 15-year-old code genius and go to town. There's big things are going to happen.
Yeah. Watch this space or create a new space. So I have one more question from me, and then we'll give it to the audience for 10 minutes or so. You got a whole room full of smart, entrepreneurial, interesting, connected women here. If you could give them all one action item, one assignment, one thing to do to help themselves and help each other, any idea about what you might want them to go out and do today or this week?
Yes, and I'm not going to put a positive spin on this one. I am going to guess that each one of you may have something toxic in your life that you feel a responsibility to continue pursuing. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a task, maybe it's a volunteer commitment, maybe it's a habit, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a colleague, maybe it's a Facebook friend. I urge you to expunge the toxic so that you can have room for something you actually want to do. You're here because you want to do something, right? I mean, when I Googled some of you from the list that Susan sent me, you want to do a lot. I urge you to get rid of somebody or something toxic.
I love that
I'm
advice.
sorry. I just have to be blunt.
Can we do it like once a week?
Yeah.
I love that. And with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions for Lisa. Any questions from the audience?
Yes.
So in terms of topics that women bloggers have covered, there have been huge strides in terms of some of the topics like infertility and just all sorts of relationship things that hadn't been out in the open. And so I wondered what you saw as the topics that still needed to be covered by women to sort of go the extra mile with things that might not have been addressed as much to date, particularly by women.
So that's a great question. I will never, I don't think, be happy as a former political and business reporter until I see as many women blogging business and entrepreneurism and the day-to-day realities of politics or policy as I see men do. But you know what? We're getting a surprising amount. If you look away from the people who get the bright light of the mainstream media spotlight shown on them, and you look at people who are doing for themselves, there are millions of women out there blogging those things. It was funny you ask that because I was on my 3 favorite industry sites this morning looking at how many female bylines there are versus male ones. I was on All Things D and TechCrunch and paid content, .org, which was bought by The Guardian, because those are the 3 that really cover this space. And you know what? It looks like we're at parity. It looks like there are just
a lot of women I know at TechCrunch and All Things D.
Yeah,
lots.
And paid content as Stacey Kramer and some others. And I'm really happy about that and surprised by that. We do not see in mainstream media coverage, though, the reflection of the reality of women's contribution to social media. So it is shocking to me to still seeing the layering. I'm hopeful that the coverage in the business press of what we are writing and doing, whether it's Christine Aaron writing at Intel Capital or it's others, I'd like to see that trickle up to the board level. I'd like to see as many women blog as there are women starting companies and then serving on their boards. But that's why I support this initiative with the boards initiative that you guys have going so much. Do you see an area where there aren't as many women blogging?
I would say business, and I would say I think there's a lot of opportunity in finance.
Okay.
Or personal finance.
Right.
I think that there are still a few women figureheads.
Right.
That have come a long way, but to your point about talking about money, I think there's further to go.
Right. Well, I think that there are some personal finance experts here today. And I think that also there are other new startups. It'll be interesting to see coming out of New York. That is really something I don't pay as much attention to, but you're right, it is the area women have the hardest trouble talking about.
So I think we have time for one last short zinger question. Anybody? Anybody out there with one more burning zinger short question?
Well, thanks, Heidi.
There we go. Yes.
So I'm so glad, this is actually, Heidi, a little bit for you. I'm so glad you brought up this notion of lifestyle business being a bad thing, and I'm wondering what we can do to change that mindset, that lifestyle business being not less than a different choice of someone raising money to go for a hockey stick, but a really productive way to go to support entrepreneurial thinking and longer term, sustainable viability contribution to society. So I'm
going to take a quick shot at this because I think it's, I love this institution. I love Stanford Business School, but I think one of the interesting things that happened to me in the past here at Stanford is someone actually said to me, well, you used to be a real role model of success for us when you were the CEO of a company, but now that you're not really kind of doing anything full time, you're not as big a role model for our graduates anymore. And I'm not kidding. Someone actually said that to me here many years ago. I think that what we need to do for anything we want to see more women be is celebrate the successes in those spaces. And I think the idea that if you went to Stanford Business School and you now don't have a full-time job, that means you are a failure is a really bad thing. And I had another friend who's the CEO of a fairly big company and now is not doing that anymore. And we were hiking, and she gets called to be CEO all the time. And she said to me, the problem I have is I've just figured out so many better things to do with my life than be the CEO of the company. And so I would just say, my answer to this is let us celebrate people who come up with ideas that enable them to lead meaningful lives and make money at the same time. I'm sure this is going to tie absolutely into what we're going to hear from Lynn later. But let us not be stuck in that pigeonhole that it's all about name and title in the company you work for. And
Amen.
let's focus more on making your life work and making all the pieces come together, even if that means that what you end up with is what we now call portfolio career. I wish we could come up with a better title than that. But.
Amen. The day that I think someone else will do a better job than I am so stepping down, because you need the very best person for the company as the company changes. I do think, as someone who has now met way more venture capitalists than I ever even thought existed, that the decision to accept venture capital, and I think that was really your point, forces a shift. You are forced to shift from a lifestyle business. Don't go get venture capital if it's not really going to fit the way you want to operate your company. And I think everyone here probably knows that.
And on that,
yeah.
I want to thank you very much
Thank you.
for being here. That was wonderful. That was wonderful.
Change lives.
Cambiar vidas.
Change lives.
Change organizations.
改变
改变世界
Change organization.
Change the world.